Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight series presented by the Black Podcasters Association, where twice a week we shine a spotlight on a Black podcaster, creative, or professional from our online community. My name is Corey Gums, and I'm the founder as well as your host. If you're watching this on YouTube or one of our other or your other favorite social media platforms, please make sure you like, subscribe, or follow, and tap any notification bells to get alerts of our upcoming episodes. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the Black Podcasters Association or to learn more about it, you can go to blackpodcastersassociation.com and learn more about our membership plan and what benefits we bring to you as a member. Today, we would like to welcome digital product management consultant, content creator, speaker, and host of the Conversations with Ask Ash hashtag Ask Ash Ask Ash Ashley Shuler. That's like a tongue twister.
It's a tongue twister. You know what I'm saying?
My New York accent doesn't help. um,
Right.
Ashley's superpower is the ability to take big picture ideas, create business systems and recipes so entrepreneurs can generate leads, increase productivity, and enhance their clients' experience. So without further ado, I have Ashley Shuler. Thank you for being here this evening. Glad to have you. I don't know if you're on the East Coast, West Coast, but we're getting hit with a snowstorm tonight. So if you're
It's
on this
East
side,
Coast. Yes, I'm on the East Coast. Yes,
okay,
it's coming.
stay warm. And but I like to start off everything with a real simple question: who you are, how you got into podcasting, what it is you do.
Oh yeah, good question, Corey. I'm just so excited to be here with the Black Podcasters Association. My name is Ashley Schuler, and so I do a few things. I really am a content creator. I'm also a someone that loves to get into people, process, and outcomes. That's really the foundation of me and my business. And so I enjoy all things that have to do with productivity, work efficiency, and helping people cross that finish line from ideation to execution. So I'm a digital project management consultant, which means I love all the things that are web designed through products and services, and really just helping people understand why process matters and why at the core of what you do, you have to be able to understand, all right, that it's so important for you to have this skill of project management, to have it where your not only your clients are benefiting from what you're producing, but also your team. It's about efficiency. It's about being able to work best. So yeah, we can go in, but I know we got a format.
I mean, we can get into that in a little bit. But
Right.
I do, we do want to talk about your podcast, your experience in your podcasting and your journey into it, especially just as a podcaster, as a business professional, as an entrepreneur, as well as a Black woman. So, I mean, whatever whatever you want to talk about. Let's first talk about how you got into podcasting.
Oh yeah, I actually was what I probably was like 2 to 3 years late of launching this podcast. And I'll tell you why, because the first idea of the podcast was all about like failure. Like I had this idea and I was like, let me interview people who failed. I was like, I don't see that out there, but I essentially, got scared of doing it. 'Cause I was like, nobody wants to you know, listen to that. So I never did it. I never did it, but I had an inkling, you got to do it, you got to do it, you got to do it. And I tell you what, I was sitting in a session and I was sitting with Nikki Saunders, who's, the content personal branding guru that's out in this space, who manages the brand of Dr. Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher. She was in session, she was going in, she was doing her thing. And I asked a question that I already knew the answer to, which was, hey, I think I need to do this podcast. And she was like, you just need to just go ahead and do it. So I just needed to go ahead and do it. And I really felt that that was like the next step. Like I really felt that was like the alignment. I felt it was like God was telling me to do it. Just go ahead and do it. So that's what it was. I went, and because I'm a process oriented person, I was like, well, I committed to doing it. I don't want to delay. So what's the first thing that you need to do? I was like, phone a friend. So I went and called like 3 people and I was like, how do you do this? I was like, what are all the things that you do? I got into massive research mode, and I researching the process. And actually, one of the things, like even right before the launch of Conversations with Ask Ash, I was like, you know what? I actually really love the workflow portion of actually, recording, releasing, the production, all these types of things. But even behind the name, Conversations with Ask Ash, I was like, let me see if I can tell stories through systems. That was like my thought in my head, because oftentimes we think about technology tools and we think, okay, systems just this and it's just techie. Oh, I'm not like a techie person, and I hate systems
Mhm.
or that type of thing. But I was like, what if I started telling stories through the lenses of people who had different types of systems? Right. And so that's what I decided to do. And so one thing that was really key about that was like, okay, let me see, where are all these lenses? Where are all these lenses? So I was like, well, it's the story. It's like the personal story thing. So I was like, let me actually put this together in a body of work capacity, right? Like
Mhm.
this is like a really big thing. Nikki talks about this a lot. What is your body of work? So I was like, let me do it through seasons. So that was my whole thing. I was like, let me go ahead and pick a theme that resonated with me, but also what was I hearing in the streets? Like, what were people talking about? What were people interested in? And so that is really how the launching of Conversations with Ask Ash, it was summer the development piece was summer 2020, and then like November 2020 was like the first episode. And so yeah, that's how it all kind of got started.
So it took you a couple of months to go through the development process and figure out
Yeah.
exactly what you wanted to do and say, and what your message was, and who you were talking to. Um,
Yes.
it takes a lot of patience because I know in this space, a lot of people they feel an urge to have to get it out as fast as possible.
That's right.
What do you say to those people out there that may be watching that are like, I want to start a podcast, I want to start it now? Like, from your perspective, from the time that you took to develop to when you launched your first episode.
Well, for me, I think about it like this, and I tell clients this, I tell my tribe this. It's really, you want to start with what's the outcome. And so you really want to start with getting an understanding of what are your goals, what's the outcome. And I always put myself in the shoes of somebody that's listening to this. What is it that they can take in terms of the next tangible step? And whether that's, and it depends on your particular, like you said, subject matter expertise or genre or what have you. But for me, it was very much outcomes driven. And so I would tell anyone to be patient with the process. Everybody's in their own journey, right?
Mhm.
You can start the podcast right up on the phone with the apps. They're making all the accessibility of how to actually do this, quite easy. But
Right.
what I would always, what I tell people that is really important to know is that you have to also understand what your particular process is. So I went through a couple of things. Capacity. What could I handle in terms of, is it going to be once a week? And I'm going to do it all by myself. Was it going to be seasons? Was it going to be, what's the format?
Right.
There's some fundamental things that I said I need to at least get a 101 level of what I'm dealing with and what do I have capacity for. And so I said to myself, well, if you look at schedule and all the different hats you're wearing and all these things, I said, well, I know for me, audio and the sound quality is very important. So I was like, let me look for someone that can do the editing piece. And I wanted to also have someone to, have the nice artwork. And so I really wanted to make it so when people saw it, they could be able to say, like, oh, okay, like let me actually see what this is all about. Right. Like, let me just go
Right.
ahead and see what I wanted it to be, something where I know that I could be pleased looking at it. And so that's what I would say to anyone that is starting off, that wants to do this podcasting thing, that you really want to take your time to understand outcomes, what's your goal, understanding capacity of what you can handle, and that gets into resources and budget, all those different types of things that you really want to really sit down, take some time, and understand that you're running your own race.
Right. So, I mean, overall, we could say intentionality, right?
That's right.
Being intentional in what you're doing with your podcast. That's a Steve Worthy. He's a member of our group. He has his own community, Podcasters Live, and that was one of the things he talked about this year. That's like his word for the year, and I was like, I really love that, and that just sums up everything in one word of what we should be doing when we're working on our podcast,
That's
right?
right.
Oh, not even just our podcast, the whole project, the marketing, the development, the recording, the editing, all of that stuff should all be intentional. And I find because I'm kind of like you, like I'm process driven. It's the engineer in me. I've kind of for my web development background, I've my program that I made to help clients is I just took the startup format, like how you start up actual companies, because I just noticed too much correlations to it, even from just like when you write your code base, right? It's just like
That's
you gotta
it.
plan it out, you gotta come up with the flow charts, you gotta do all these different steps. And I was like, well, it's a similar step in podcasting. I was like, well, let me see how I can translate the startup space into podcasting. And it was like everything just you start realizing everything has to be intentional in what you're doing. So what is your overall message when somebody comes to your podcast? What can they expect to hear from you?
Yeah, I that's a really good question because it's seasonal and topical based. How I really craft the experience is I actually think about a season and I think about sort of, all right, what should it be? I go and have my process. I pray about it. I ask God, all right, is this in alignment of values? What's the overall theme that I'm trying to make sure that is out there. And so I come up with a list. I come up with a list of people that I want to reach out to, and I actually create an invitation. So I create an invitation and do an audiogram, and I honestly set the intention of why I would like to interview them, and also too giving space for people to think about it because you know just because yes doesn't mean they gonna come,
Right,
and so
right,
I often want to make sure too that I make room for, do you want to have a conversation about it if you are interested? And people have taken me up on it and said, I'd love to meet with you to talk about what your podcast is, how I can add value to it. And so that's what's happened. And so I've gotten on the phone with people. We've talked about what I'm looking to do. And so I really want to make sure that the experience for them, number one, that it's fun. Number two, that they are in their zone of genius. And so that's what I always look for with their guests, that I'm not stretching you to talk about something you don't know about.
right.
And so I do a lot of research into their background, into also formulating the questions. And also, like right before that we talk, we have our pre chat and we talk again about the goals of the episode. And that way, there is something that is centered, that's real, and that they can understand. All right, headed into this, and I always also give them a preview of what's the flow. And a lot of times, even though I'm a process person, I've like written a whole bunch of questions. I'm always listening, and so I'll flip my questions because I've heard something, and I'm like, that was a bar. Let's go into
Right.
that direction, right? And we'll make that shift. And so what it always happens is that at the end of every episode, man, it's always golden. Like it's always golden. People have a lot of fun, and so I'm always honored and always ecstatic when I'm able to have a really successful podcast and that it's pleasing not only to what they've talked about, but also when they listen to the episode when it comes out.
That's dope. I mean, like I was listening to, like we were talking before we went live, we was talking about your episode with Nikki Saunders, and
That's right.
I was like, this is a really good episode. And there was a time when she was just talking, right? She was just dropping gems and and you didn't say a word, right? And I think that's really important too. And I kind of had a feeling, like now that you say this, kind of had a feeling like you just letting the conversation go where it needed to go, you know,
Yeah,
um, just let her do whatever she needs to do and get it out and say what she needs to say,
that's
and
right.
you just figure out like when to jump in and say what you have to say. So, and I think that's an art, right? That's some
Right.
it's a skill that, well, some people say it's an art, but it's also a skill that can be learned. and it takes time. I've learned that doing this show over the past 20 something episodes we've been doing is like,
Yeah.
okay, I just gotta let you talk. So I think that's important. Now I know you mentioned you're a process orientated person, and maybe it's just me because I know when my processes gets jumbled up and screwed up, sometimes it throws me off track. What have been like in the initial stages of your podcast? What were some mistakes that you made that like that somebody could learn from? Like, what was like one or two mistakes that you made that you're like, okay, I learned from this. I learned from this lesson.
Well, I think one of the things was also the timing of sending it off to an editor and then understanding like the timing of like your rollout. So really being clear about how you're actually we're going to schedule everything. I think that was one thing that um kind of really sort of grated me in some ways that I was like, I feel like I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like you kind of got like that whole vibe. But I one thing that you said that really freed me in the group was talking about, people were talking a lot about workflows, about perfecting them. And you had a post where you said it takes time. Like you have to do it in iterations. And I said, he's right. I was like, there's no need to sit there and say you have to have the perfect one because I'm in whimsical. I remember I spent like 2 hours just going through everything from start to finish, like from the links to the information into how to do the checklist because I'm doing the workflows in ClickUp to all these types of things. So the second thing that I would say just in terms of rookie mistakes, I would say that just even in terms of just understanding like your audio and like being maybe in spacey rooms and things like that would kind of like distort it. And so I have this audio engineer that I'm working with. He's super patient, answers like all of my questions. And I was like, well, why? I said, why does it sound like this? And so he's like, well, one of the reasons is X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, it would be better to record here. So he's really great at like helping me to understand some of these mechanical and technical things. I'm like, okay, it's fixable. Now I know this strategy and now I know this tip. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you went right up my alley because that's what I do. I'm an audio engineer as well, and
Yes.
if you ever saw a post in the group, you see, my pet peeves. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that you have somebody you work with, and it's important that people take the time to understand that because it is a difference maker. There's you don't have to have the perfect equipment. You don't have to have the perfect recording location, but understanding certain things with the science of sound, then you'll be able to manipulate your sound a little bit better so that in post production with your editor, they can work a little magic in that space. So, I like the editor one. We don't really hear people talk about that part, right? Most people just think you pass it on to your editor and then just magically gets edited and you have it right there, boom, boom, boom. Not realizing that some editors have other clients, right? So,
That's right.
typically when I talk to clients about editing, I always tell them when I do it, it's for every hour, it's 2 to 3 hours, right? Could go
Yes.
longer than that, but ideally, you wanna give yourself 2 to 3 hours because it is time consuming, takes a lot of work, and if you're a perfectionist like me with it, you're gonna keep going back and forth until you get it right, so which is messed up. That's one reason why I said that about workflow because I used to beat myself up over that. I'm like, "But this is
Okay.
just how you work." You wanna make sure when you're
Okay.
doing this stuff, you give yourself enough space to be able to say to a client or to a person, "Hey, this is how I work, and this is how I do it, and this is how long it's gonna take." I know there's services out there, they can get it back to you in 24 hours, or they can get
Right.
it back to you within 72 hours. So it is important that people watching and listening understand that it's editing is not a magic pill. It does take time, especially if you have a really good editor, it's gonna take some time.
That's right.
And if they have a high standard for themselves, definitely it's gonna take some time. So I think that's a great I mean, sorry you had to learn it that way. Wish we coulda this is some of the things I try to do in the group to help people with
Right.
these learning curves so they understand they don't make this like and that's why I love, the members of the group because they share their experiences so people can learn from it and say, "I'm not gonna make this mistake," right? Isn't and that's the whole goal. Um, sorry, you was gonna say
Oh,
something?
no, I was just gonna
Okay.
say, I think it's really important to manage expectations, and you do have to do that on both sides. So I
Right.
had to look at that from my perspective. I said, "Okay, well, you know that, this is not just a one-on-one and that's the only thing. So you just plan better." You know what I'm saying? Communicate, and so you can be able to, streamline that. So, yep.
So what would you say was and I'm not trying to put you on a hot seat with this one, so
No, this is
just in
good.
case anybody watches, but what would you say was the episode you had the most fun with?
Oh, wow. That's a really, really good That's a really good question, because the episode that I had the most fun with, gosh, it probably has to be a recent one because the season's not released yet. So okay, so but let me tell the people what's happening, what I'm doing. So there is a such I want to say a great conversation around having teams, being a part of a team, hiring, firing folks, what have you. I need to find the right person. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I want to interview people, their leaders, the CEOs, and a few of their team members, and have this conversation about the power of team and the system around having team members. And so I was like, okay, who do I know? Who do I know that, would be down to do this? So I was in another Facebook group, and I was from on a different platform that I was doing the recording for. And I didn't, and to be honest, I didn't even think about it until maybe like a couple of days. And I was like, the group that I was interviewing, they said we have like 6 people. And I was like, "Okay, great." And listen, you know how our emails are. I could have sworn they didn't say 6. I could have sworn they said like 3. But
Mhm.
when I said 6, I said, "Oh, now wait a minute." I said, "Now how's that going to work?" And so I got kind of like, "Okay, do you have a plan? Like Ashley, like you need a plan for this." Okay, so I was like, let me figure it out. It's gonna be all right. So we got to doing the interview, and let me tell you, it was so fun to just, and again, we all had the pre-chat. We just talked about the goals for the podcast. It was just a lot of fun. And what I loved about it was we all talked about, all the different aspects of team and learning and work environment. And so that was fun. I felt like that was one of the ones that's going to be coming out soon. Let's see, what's another one that was really, really good? One with Nicole Lynn Lewis, and she was a part of, she's founder of Generation Hope, a nonprofit in DC. And so she was a part of the impact season, breaking down purpose and impact. And so that was great. I had read her book, and I had, said, so I got to have her on the podcast. And so she had, so many, I didn't even get through all the questions I wanted to ask her because we sort of pivoted and went in different directions. But yeah, there's a lot of really special moments that were like, that was really good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you probably
Yeah.
have those moments where you're like, this was really good. So yeah, there's a lot of moments, but those are a few of the ones that stood out.
Okay. We'll be looking forward to those. So that's in the
Yeah.
new season, right?
Yeah, well, so the power of team is going to be coming up soon, but the impact season, the one with Nikki Saunders and the one with Nicole and Lewis, that's already out now for people to listen to. Yeah,
So
so
how many episodes are in a season of your podcast?
I like to do it Netflix limited series. So I do anywhere from 8 to 10. I do anywhere from 8 to 10 because I really look at this as a body of work. And I look at it from the perspective of taking somebody and saying, if you want to learn about the fundamentals of work organization, project management, you need to listen to that. You need to listen to that solo season, that season 3, which can take you from start to finish of understanding some of the things that you need to know about in terms of how you can stay efficient in working your business. And so the another other season, if you're looking for someone that is if you're somebody who's looking to understand what it means to actually create your own lane, you're going to want to listen to season 2, which has a great cast of 8 to 9 guests that really they're trailblazers in their industry. And so my focus was I want to point people to seasons that is actually going to help them in their personal and also in their business. That was the thought process. Mhm.
That's interesting because I know I just like stumbled onto the idea of like putting seasons into themes, and that to me that would help make shape the content that you will
Mhm.
create. So
That's
it
right.
makes the process a little bit easier, right? And then you know what kind of guests you're looking for,
That's right.
kind of content you want. If it's a guest, if it's an interview based type of podcast, or just the kind of things you want to talk about. So And I'm finding that that's, even for myself with my podcast, that's eventually going to come out at some point when I have the time to.
Come
Um,
on.
people keep hearing me talk about it. Yeah, my podcast is coming, and I'm like, oh man, yeah, I don't have the time, but because I want to make sure I do it right. But it's kind of was like, how do I talk about? Because I want to address pod fade, and I think
Yes,
it's like the white elephant in the room. I hear you hear a lot of people talking about setting up a podcast, making, getting a podcast successful in 30 days, but you don't talk about the other portions of it, the psychology of it, the
that's right.
frustrations, the dark side of it, basically, right? The not the limited resources. One of my favorite sayings is podcasting is an expensive hobby, right? So, and getting people to understand that role, but I want to figure out how I want to get my message across, and that to me, surprising enough, and helping other people do it is easy, but for myself, it's like, and I think it's just
Mhm.
me having, and I think when you said, when you was having on that episode, when you was like, what you said earlier, sometimes you do, and I hate saying this, so you guys in the group, you're gonna probably call me a hypocrite because I'll be like, don't just do it, right? But sometimes you just got to do it.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
but and because sometimes you're trying to strive for such perfection, it's like you never get it done, right? So it's coming soon. It's 2022 is coming soon.
It's coming soon.
But
You got to step into it. Yeah.
yeah. So how do you go about? Because you have some real interesting names on your in your episodes. Um, her name never. I'm sorry. Look at the comments. No, it's not going to be my first guest. Bethany's not going to be my first guest, but actually, it's not going to be a guest-driven podcast. It may, I might. I was thinking about it, having some episodes where I might have a guest come in, depending on the topic and the subject matter. But it's really going to be me doing, and I think that's the other part that makes it hard because a solo show is typically the hardest kind because you're the one who has to do all the content and all the talking. So I think that's the other portion of it that I was like, I don't know. But this is not about me, it's about you. So how do you go about getting your guests? Because I know that for a lot of members in our group, that's one of the big questions. And you have some names on your list, on your guest list that I said, I was okay, 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 this is interesting. How do you go about connecting with people that may not I don't want to say be celebrities or anything like that, but who that's not a right word either. I
No,
was
I
gonna
know
say
what
how do
you're
you reach,
saying. You're
but
at you're
how do you
I
go
mean, I know
how do
I
you
know
how do you
exactly
attract
what
them to your podcast?
I'm very big on relationships. Like I'm a
Okay.
relationship person. Like after this, Corey, I'm gonna be like, we need to have some, conversations. We need to developing relationships, and so I feel it's super important that when we're in our day to day businesses, brands, and whatnot, that we are taking the time to get to know people on a human level, on a
Right.
very much a human level. And so for me, I am someone who I meet folks, I'll set up, some chats with them. I'm in different types of communities, so when I see alignment and I see like, okay, this looks like this will be a great guest, where would they fit in if I were to theme this out, right? Like where would they fit in into the series? And so that's a lot of what I do is I come in, and so in my mind I'll just come up with lists of names, that'll
Mhm.
come to me. And there's some folks that were on the list that I didn't really even have much of a relationship with, but again, even inviting them and also sending the invitations out, was very intentional on what I was seeing, why I wanted them on the podcast, and then what was the goal. And so when I was able to communicate that, whether our next step was the pre-chat to see if it really worked, or it was the actual let's book and let's go and let's book an hour and let's do the podcast. That's what's been working for me, and that's what I'll continue to do. So it's just going back to that word of the year, that intentional piece of it. But that's what it is for me. Yeah, because I'm definitely a people person.
Now I'm gonna assume that there were a lot of rejections as well as a lot of rejections as well as people accepting, correct? On that list, or because you
Um,
were so intentional, it just worked out?
it worked out. There was only maybe a few with scheduling issues. And
Okay.
that, that they were like not, not the right season. They were like, I definitely want to do this. And they're just like, what's your timing? Like it's kind of a crazy time, for me to do it. It's kind of like not the right, moment. So that was, and so if that happens where I'm going back to a topic, and if it's too far out in advance, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it won't work. But for me, it was definitely looking at it from the perspective of, let me send these out in advance. Let me try to get it at a timing that, works for everyone. But, everybody's, schedule is different.
Right. So you do like batch recording, or you do? I mean, because you released the whole season at once. I mean, well, probably over
Yes.
time, right? But you do batch
Mhm.
recording.
I do the batch recording. So I do something. So if I just like, and I do like to flip it where, if I do a guest season, then the next one will be solo. And so I'll go and I'll flip it into a topic where I'm like, okay, what's this season about? What am I hearing? What's going to resonate with the audience? And so I do the batching. So I do themes, and then I write it out. So what I'll do is I have a folder in ClickUp, and I have a checklist. And so I'm writing in there, just with the talking points, and then I'm scheduling out my time throughout the week, and I'm just doing these episodes.
Okay, that's dope. I did have a question I wanted to ask you from your episode with Nikki Saunders.
Sure.
Because you guys were talking about creating impactful content, right?
Yes, absolutely.
In your opinion, how does podcast help with that? How does podcast help creating impactful content?
Yeah, I think I believe because it's your voice. So it goes back to when I was making the decision that, well, I already had the answer to, which was go ahead and do the podcast. It is my distinct voice needs to be out here. My opinion, my expertise, how I'm seeing things in the world and in the marketplace, and and in the industry. I need to put myself out there. And so that's how, for me, in terms of the impactful content piece of it, that's how that fits. And so it goes into that outcomes piece I was talking about earlier.
Mhm.
What is it that I'm saying? Does it, how is someone that listens to this? What is their takeaway? And so I know that the information works because someone will direct message me and say, "Hey, Ashley, I just finished listening to XX, number podcast. I had to go back again and take more notes." Now, there's, some episodes in the solo season. They're not really like super super long, but I made them that way because number one, my in terms of my process and workflow and talking about the PM work, it can get a little drab and dry. It's entertaining to me, but I have to craft it in a way where it's teaching. And I have
Right.
to be able to use examples that make sense. So there was a episode on documentation. There was a live that was done that Nikki Saunders did, where she was talking about Biggie, and she was what was it? I Got a Story to Tell, the one on the Netflix. And
Okay.
so, yeah, and so I watched it, and there's a whole thing about how he had all this footage. Like Biggie had all this footage. And when I was looking at it, I was like, oh man, he had his friend record everything and document everything. So my one of my talking points that I talk to clients in my tribe about is that the importance of documentation in your business and why you need it in terms of growing, scaling, hiring. And so I was like, oh, we can make this connection. We can make this connection. So being able to document what's happening, everything from content creation to your hiring process to podcasting to YouTube, like, all these things. And it's like, this is what we as business owners and brands need to be thinking about. And again, there's tools out there where, again, like Loom, and that's a like screen recording. You can do stuff with Google in the Google Doc and the voice. So many different ways to do it where it's not overbearing. But I was like, let me be able to think about how to make a one-for-one connection.
Okay. Now I know. Let's go into your business side since you brought that up. I
Yeah.
noticed that you are getting into you're exploring the NFT space.
Oh yeah.
So and I saw on I follow you on Twitter. I saw in the Twitter feed like in a couple of days ago you were in a conversation or there was a space about NFTs and
Oh yes.
you either shared it or it said that you were in it. And it's something that I've been also thinking about, but I don't know much about it. My son's an artist. I'm trying to get him into the NFT space, so I've been doing a little bit of research to help him with that. But where do you see the NFT space in the podcasting industry? Do you have you thought about that, or have you explored that idea of how podcasters can use NFTs to help them also expand their brand as well as create another stream of revenue?
I mean, this is a really important subject. One of the things in terms of this NFT movement is that I encourage everyone, even if you're saying that you don't understand it, find out about what this whole thing is about, because what we're looking at is we're looking at the future. We're looking at where technology is going. And when I was at the Blackfin Tech conference with
Mhm.
Bond and Play, it was super dope. I just love this aspect of equity. I love the aspect of ownership. And I was like, bingo, click. Because you're seeing you're seeing all the people buying all the NFTs that are worth houses. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you get lost in the sauce of what this is. From my perspective, because it's, you relate to this operations and process. I'm like, well, where are all the people who do the managing and doing all the process? Where all those folks are at? So what I'm doing is bringing together industry leaders, whether you're a creator, developer, Discord community, manager, and I'm having these conversations, Black women in NFTs, for online business owners and nonprofit professionals. Why the nonprofit professionals piece is because many people think that nonprofits, well, I'm going to say many people think, but there's a certain mentality that for nonprofits that they're not profitable. And and we know that that's not always true, but there's also aspects of strategy, and there's all sorts of different circumstances. But I'm thinking about opportunity, right? I'm thinking about what if, especially Black nonprofits, getting the opportunity to get the right funding to do good work.
Right.
This is like, and again, this is very much, in the future. And again, everyone has to take the educational path, not the path, don't try to rush, the whole experience. But when we're talking about how NFTs can contribute and add to your brand and business, podcasting is a perfect opportunity to merge those two worlds. Whether you want to do a podcast in a virtual reality space, or you just want to start talking about ways that you can expand your brand through the NFTs, because all it's about exclusivity and access, and at a high level, there's other aspects and elements to it. But thinking about it from the perspective of, all right, what sort of digital asset could I create with my podcast that could have an exclusive experience? We just have to dream a little bit. You know what I'm saying? In
Yeah.
terms of what it is. And so many, when I was reading about NFTs, I was thinking to myself, well, I was like, oh, I'm not going to buy a trading card, or, like you start looking at, well, I'm not an artist. But then once you start seeing all the different ways in which NFTs are created, I'm like, oh, okay, service providers can do this. Absolutely, podcasters, absolutely, other industries can also be able to get in on this. So it's just a matter of learning the actual place, metaverse, virtual land, AR, all these types of things, and seeing how everything fits together. But yeah, there's a piece where you can, if I know that if we're thinking about this correctly, look at the NFT as the opportunity. How can you create this access and exclusivity piece for your podcast when we're looking at it from that lens?
Okay. So, I mean, I don't want this to turn into a whole NFT conversation, but from the NFT, from that exclusivity and portion of it, does that mean I make a podcast and that just only one person it's accessible to only one person? I think that's where some of the confusion comes in.
Oh,
Let's
absolutely.
talk about how
Well,
that
it's
works.
the way that I understand it right now is that you can make, let's say you want to make, maybe it's like 10 exclusive, NFT digital assets, right? One of the things that you could do is have a special episode that can actually be an NFT, because they can be MP3s, they can be albums, they can be digital, like tickets and whatnot. So why not? Why couldn't a podcast episode be a one of one? Because again, you're not making it for just the masses to have, like our recordings are right now, where it's like anyone. It isn't, we could be, 50 years later, so people are going to be able to, listen to it. But now it's like, oh, there's some exclusivity. Well, what if I
Right.
had a conference? And what if and with the conference came the special NFT token that also was packaged in such a way where my podcast is a part of it. So now it's thinking of the opportunity. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to ask that because I know there's a lot of confusion from people on the outside. You hear you're hearing about the, like anything else, you hear about the money that's being made by NFTs.
Oh yeah.
But people are like, well, what is that? One, it's bad enough people don't really understand the blockchain, but then you're adding this other, we got caught up in the whole Bitcoin rush the past couple of months and stuff like that, and then
Right.
now they're looking for the next thing, and the NFT seems to be the next space on the blockchain technology, and it's like, well, huh? And it's like, how does this work? And and of course you see the money being made, and you're like, well, how can I get involved in this? Um, and it gets a little confusing, even for myself and from a developer point of view. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't put time into learning it like I want
Right.
to, which is probably one reason why I'm like, huh, like I'm a little all over the place with it. But I know once I sit down, because when I used to go to like Google developer meetings and stuff, and I would see what people were
Mhm.
doing with the
That's
blockchain.
right.
I'm sitting here like when I heard about it, I was like, that's what those guys were doing 2, 3 years ago when they were showing off their little apps and stuff that they were making. I was like, oh shoot, this is where we're at now. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think it's amazing, and that's another space where we gotta get our people in there, but that's a whole other conversation.
Right. It's a
But
whole nother
I think I always
yeah.
look for opportunities, because like one of the things I was thinking about was trying to figure out how to do a coin for podcasters. But see, for me, I'm more of a tech. It's the developer in me. Is From what I understand, coins have to have serve a purpose. I'm not thinking about the speculative market. I'm
Right.
thinking more about what is going to be the purpose, and why would podcasters and their listeners use this in the ecosystem? It has to serve some kind of benefit to everybody involved. And I just haven't really solved that problem yet. But I think I would love to, like, maybe, in the association, we have a longer conversation about this space, and invite you to that. Not to put you on the spot, but I think it would be a great conversation in the
Oh wow.
future.
Yeah.
Um, just in general for our community, because one thing I do like about podcasting, as well as stuff like the blockchain and stuff for the Black community, is that it gives us an opportunity to hedge what the economic issue, that we have, especially here in America, with our counterparts, right? With the
That's right.
savings and creating legacy, and for our families and stuff like that. And that's one way to do it, is through that technology. It's really a great way to do it through your technology, because
That's right.
my portfolio, if anything should happen to me, it would go to my children, and it will still continue to grow, but even without them managing it. So, and then, they will be able to benefit from that. So I think I want to start having more of those conversations. But let's talk about your business and what you
Sure.
do, because there are people who are watching, and I always like to explore what people are doing outside of podcasting, because I found a lot of times what we do outside of podcasting actually, in some way, form, or fashion, becomes a part of podcasting.
That's right.
So let's talk about your business, what you do. How do you work your
Absolutely.
magic for businesses?
How do I work my magic? Well, a lot of it is I work with solopreneurs, small business owners. I work with teams, and I help them solve the problem of work efficiency, how they manage their work, and really getting down to understanding what is chaotic in their business, and then what's the best way to streamline it. So that is essentially, those are the pain points that I'm solving for my clients. And so I have services where I do a ClickUp consulting. We have, folks that are really knocking down the door, or they're, talking and saying like, hey, I got to get my team organized. Like, how do I do that? Like, I feel like I'm stuck in the middle of all of this, like my work. So how do
Mhm.
I free myself of that? And so a lot of it has to pull back and say, well, let's look at what you're currently doing. So there's process evaluation in that. What's working well, what's not working well, what are the bottlenecks? What makes you want to scream? And so, like, what are those things? And so I always tell people that the tool is secondary, and that first it's the workflow piece,
Right.
right? Because 9 times out of 10, we're all switching to, whether it's the recording platform for podcasting, whether it's the hosting platform, all those types of things. And so it comes down to, all right, where am I at in terms of my business growth wise? What supports the work that I do in terms of my technology and my workflows? And so though that's the business that that's being built. That's what I'm doing. So yeah, I do project management consulting, where people bring me in and they you know, have me to come in and say, "Hey, this is what I'm working on. I don't really know how to put this together. How do I go about from start to finish executing this work? What does that look like?" So I come in and do consulting and really go about helping the process become smoother, helping them to be able to execute their work, making sure that people know what they're doing and how they're doing it. So
Okay. Oh, that's great. So I know you spent a lot of time with me tonight, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to wind down the conversation. But I always like to ask our guests, what does it mean for you to be a black podcaster? If you have an opinion on that, or if you have a feeling on that, being a black woman in podcasting, as well as being a member of the podcast Black Podcasters Association.
Oh, absolutely. I believe, just as a Black woman that is a podcaster, it's just important that my voice, that other Black women's voices are heard. And it's important that our message is out there. It's important that we are standing tall and that we were out there with our voice, really just making our declaration, whatever that is in terms of industry, and also that impact that we're trying to make. And so it's important for the space to know who we are, what we do, how we make that impact. And so, yeah, that's one thing. And then being a part of the Black Podcasters Association, I love it because it is a community of our people. It's a supportive community. I've never gone in and seen anybody criticize one another. I like the fact that it's honest, the fact that you don't have to be perfect, and that we're all just learning and growing together. That's what I like about it. So I come in there and I'm like, okay, I didn't know that. Okay, that's a good tip. Or like, okay, here's how I can add value into the community. So I really like it. There's a lot of great resources, and I like to be educated about the space that I'm in. And so that's what is such a difference maker about Black Podcasters Association.
I really appreciate that. We work very hard, not just myself, but a lot of the members as well.
Yes.
We created a culture there that a lot of members enjoy. So I noticed a lot of our members are protective of that culture as well. Not just
Yes.
me, and then we have a good moderation team behind the scenes as well that work hard as well. So really appreciate that. So, of course, the most important question I'm going to ask you tonight is, how can people reach out to you? How can they learn more about what you do? Um, what platforms can they find you on? Um, all those good questions.
Absolutely. Come and hang out with me on Instagram,
Cool.
at Ashley Schuler _. Also, I'm on LinkedIn too. Great conversations going on over there as well. And definitely, if you're interested in Black women in NFTs and participating in those series of Twitter space conversations where operations meets creativity, you'll definitely want to hang out with me on Twitter. And so that's where I'm at. Send me a message. Send me a message, because I love to have a conversation. What are you working on? What stresses you out? What new things are you looking to embark upon in 2022? So yeah, I'm definitely, my DMs are open for those conversations.
You forgot the most important one. where your podcast is at.
Oh yeah, now okay, now see, there we go. I mean, because we're here, this is what we're here to do. Conversations with askash.com. Go through there. There's 40 episodes, and it's great. Really good content. I always tell people this is the best podcast that you probably just haven't heard of yet. And some really fans.
I like the confidence.
Yeah, it really is. It's really great. There's some really rich conversations that are in there. There's some really good content that just makes you think, and there's also just very much actionable content that's in there. So yeah, definitely rate, review, subscribe, and share with a friend.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate it. Do you have any last words of advice or anything you might want to give anybody before we go offline?
Listen, I want people to stay the course. I want folks to really and just double down on this work. Stay in your lane and double down on this work and just be fearless in 2022. And yeah, let the world hear your voice because we need it.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Everybody, make sure you check out Conversation with #Ask Ash, or go to conversations with askash.com to
That's
learn
it.
more about Ashley's podcast. We're going to wrap up. Thank you for checking out the Spotlight. Make sure you tune into our next show coming up this Tuesday, February 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern, where we will spotlight our next Black Podcaster Association member and author, Katira Polland. She's host of the Editor Knows Best podcast. Again, if you are on YouTube or one of your favorite social media platforms, make sure you like, subscribe, tap the notification bell, and so that you can stay up to date of our next upcoming episodes. And if you'd like to learn more about the Black Podcasters Association, you can go to blackpodcastersassociation.com, where you can learn about our mission statement, our purpose, as well as become a member. So again, thank you, Ashley, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, y'all.